Welcome to Shifting Impressions, Conversations with the Realm of Beings, with me, Gretta Chamberlain, and the Realm of Beings. Shifting Impressions, which is one of the vehicles that supports the transmission of the Realm of Beings, is here to assist you in delving into your being by providing numerous topics and discussions for you to intake as you deepen your connection with your inner world. Shifting Impressions is here to assist you in strengthening yourself as you excavate to understand your true nature. Join us today and learn to shift your mindset, shift your thoughts, and shift your focus to recreate your life and produce a new you. Shifting Impressions starts now.
Thank you for joining us today. Hello, listeners. Thank you for joining us today on Shifting Impressions, Conversations with the Realm of Beings. I'm Leigh, and I'm here with Gretta, Carol, and as always, the Realm of Beings. We're very pleased to be a part of Transformation Network, and you can catch this podcast live Fridays, 11 a.m. Eastern Time, 8 a.m. Pacific. And after that, you can find us on whatever your favorite streaming service is. These conversations will help you examine your life and your creation of reality. They will help you look at what you're creating, how it shows up, and perhaps shift things if you would like things to be a little different. Each week, if you're new to the podcast, we discuss a quotation that Gretta has downloaded from the Realm of Beings. And this week, listeners, we have a doozy. Lovey-doveys everywhere. We will be talking about relationships. Yes, we will. The quotation we'll be working with this week is, create a partner who loves himself, herself, and is one with you in happiness and joy. So, ladies, welcome. Where would you like to start this podcast off today? I want to know, Gretta, how do we do
that? I think to start off with the word create. In that, I'd like to review with the audience. We've said it in other podcasts, or the Realm of Beings that stated it. You know, we have the law of attraction that people look into. We also have saying manifestation or attracting things to us. What the realm has been teaching is that it's not really the law of attraction that we have to create. So today, it's not about attracting a mate to come to us, but it's about creating a mate that we would like to experience with.
I think it's still dealing with, again, unconditional love of self, in which case you're creating the support for loving yourself. And I'm just going to share something personal with the audience. I am single. I have not been in a long-term relationship for quite a while. The last one that I had been part of was right before I met Gretta. And Gretta helped. This was before I knew about creation of reality and the role it plays in your relationships. And once I met Gretta and learned what this was about, I was able to reflect back and realized that relationship taught me so much about what I was creating, how I needed to love myself, what lessons I was being supported in. And it was like so illuminating to recognize these things. And I then went back and started to review previous relationships throughout my life and saw the loop going on of the same lessons I was being supported in, still not loving myself. And it's mind-opening, and it's so important. Everyone has heard that expression, you can't love someone else till you love yourself. Nothing is more true than that. We must love ourselves, and then we'll get the support to love ourselves.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, Leah, I saw
Oh,
your
no,
opening.
I just wanted to thank Carol for sharing that because, so many times on this podcast, we talk about, lessons and, a key part that we're always trying to understand and maybe intake and have grow within is the fact that, you know, it all starts from the internality of who we are, right? And it's wonderful when you can take these experiences in your life and contemplate them and reflect on them and take responsibility, right? You have to take responsibility for what shows up there. And oftentimes, I mean, I can only speak for me, of course. Responsibility is a key. I think one of the keys in this whole experience here. Oftentimes I have deferred that, and we've talked a lot about our cultural frameworks. A lot of time want like to point fingers, and we like to blame the other because it's easier, right? And it's really, that is like, I think that is like the crux of what we try to share here, is that all of the things that we're creating are for our own good, although they may not in that moment feel like it. But when you can get some awareness and maybe some distance from that moment and just look back and say, what was my role here? And thank for, just like you said, Carol, supporting you where you were, so they could be like that reflective mirror back to you to let you know, like, we want to say it's them, but it's really such a tool to see where we are. So thanks for, sharing that experience that you had.
And
Now that,
oh,
go ahead, Carol.
Oh, I was just going to say another lesson learned that I accumulated from that was not only to resent the other person, but to be appreciative that relationship, though it didn't end the way I would have preferred, was so beneficial to my growth and my understanding. So the resentment just melted away. And I think that's sort of important too.
Agree with both of you, and how we attract our partners or our mates is based on how we feel about ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes how we perceive ourselves and how we create our reality is based on what we learned as children. And I think, Leigh brought that up, and she said cultural frameworks, but it's also familial frameworks. For instance, if you're not, if you're not taught that you're a worthy person, and that taught at an early age, loving yourself, appreciating yourself, seeing the greatness in yourself. And we're taught instead to see that we're worthless, that we don't mean anything, that we're not going to be able to accomplish anything, and that we have lack of love of self. Then we carry this into our adulthood. When you carry this into your adulthood, then you are going to attract individuals to you or mates to you that support you in that. So I think that's why Carol was saying, it's both Carol and Leigh are saying it's important to love yourself, because you attract some. The quote says, bring, not even attract, but create somebody. Himself and herself is one with you in happiness and joy. Well, if you have happiness and joy, then you're definitely not going to create somebody else who's in happiness and joy. What you're going to create is the person who's going to support you where you are at, and that is not loving yourself. That is why many times, regardless if we're male or female, we wind up in relationships that we look and say, how in the world did I ever feel attracted to this person? Mainly in the beginning. Because a lot of times, I'll hear people, male or female, they'll say, oh, I found this person. I think this person is my soulmate. Or they'll tell me, I feel this person is my spiritual twin.
Twin flame.
That's right, twin flame. And they said, oh, we spent hours talking on the phone. I was talking with him for 3 hours. Oh, he's just so wonderful. Or, oh, she's just so wonderful. Myself personally, they tell me that I stop. I said, you're so comfortable with that person. That means that person is putting you where you're at. We're still working on you trying to love yourself. So who are you attracting? And I found that women can attract or create a duplicate of their father. They might have a father, that has been very nasty to them, hasn't shown love to them, has shown a sense of rejection toward their daughter or son. So what do? The daughter then goes out because she's been taught this. See, this is the thing about this quote. We're taught that. So therefore, many times you'll find that you have created a duplicate of your father, and now you're calling him your mate. Or
and you're probably dancing on a pole.
And then you probably, if you're male, you can possibly go in and take a look at it and say, I've married my mother. Because you carried those experiences from when you were young to where you are now.
Well, they're patterns, right? I mean, it's a pattern that is unfolding, I guess unconsciously, that we're exposed to something, and then it creates a pattern. And then when we're not being conscious or aware, that pattern is just, unfolds and loops. And, something I want to say, Carol, you said, you have like appreciation for the person who, supported you where you were. I just also say to people, have appreciation for yourself. As we said on, previous podcasts also, this is a process, right? This is not time or one experience in this 3D realm, and then like we get these 60 or 80 or 40 or whatever term you create in your span, and then like, oh, that's it, we got to get it right, and one chance. I mean, this is an ever evolving process. We're here, as Gretta has said before, for the evolutionary experience of the force, and we do that. I was reading something, and, it's like a rock doesn't turn into a soft pebble by like one wave crashing on it. It's wave after wave after wave that like refines that stone and takes away the rough edges, so we have to be patient and honor ourselves too in the experiences that we're creating, because nothing is a mistake. Everything is for our growth if we can shift the perspective and see it that way. And, it's an evolution. That's why we're here, for expansion.
Absolutely, absolutely. I know that in my own life, because I was taught to negate myself, I learned that as a child. So I created all kinds of experiences that supported me throughout my life not loving or appreciating myself, one of which is my marriages. So I know when I was moving to Africa, my one of the Baha'is, because I was following that religious belief at the time, and he said, you know, there are 500 people that you can love, you know, meaning mates, that you can love in this world. And I thought to myself, I was only about 23 then, and I said, what is this man talking about? I have 500 people I can love in this world, fall in love with, you know. And then sure enough, you know, I married my first husband. It was very, very challenging, very, very challenging, very, there were some parts of it that were very loving and caring, but then there were other parts that were extremely physical and emotionally abusive, you know, and so, and then he died. So then I moved on to a second husband. And I made a repeat of the first one. So now I'm in a loop, but I didn't know I was in a loop. But if you're seeing that you're creating the same person over and over and over and over again, you're in a loop. I was in a loop, you know, and then a loop of teaching me, reinforcing in me to negate Greta, to negate who I am, not to love myself. I'm not worthy, you know. So that's what I was learning. And then I go to my daughter's father. We stayed married for 15, 16 years. And I remember going to him one day, and I told him, I said, you know, a year from now, we're not going to be together anymore. I said, because the lessons that we have learned, that we're to learn with each other, are over. See, when we separate from somebody, regardless if it's legal separation, if it's divorce, whatever, that's because the lesson that we have with that person is over. With that particular person is over. But you can still be
right, is done.
Yeah. With that person, though. But that doesn't mean the lesson is done for you. Because I moved on. After I started to you know, my present husband there, he's my fourth. Actually, he's my fifth. I'll tell you about my fourth another day. But anyway, you know, it started to change, but I could see certain things that I had carried over. And I said, look what you carried over, Greta. You got to do better than this. You got to care about yourself. You got to love yourself. So I'm having a much better experience. And seeing with my daughter's father, what did I lose? Because I went from physical abuse and emotional abuse to physical abuse and emotional abuse, then to more emotional. So I said, well, I'm getting better because I'm letting go of the physical. You know, that's how I looked at it. I said, well, you're doing better. Pat yourself on the shoulder, Greta, you know. And now I don't have either one. So, but look how long it took. Because now I'm 76 years old. So the man that I'm with now, we're only together for 7 years. So that one whole loop was almost a 62-year-old loop. So when, you know, when you say, Leigh, it's not, you know, with the pebble, with the ocean, I thought that was a great, great example. You know, if I look at my life like that, man, it took my pebble or my rock a long time to get mushy.
Right. I mean, it's all a process. And, you know, sometimes I just was listening and I just wanted to shift. You know, there are also wonderful patterns that we, you know, take within and also recreate. You know, sometimes it seems like we're only focusing on the maybe more unwanted ones, you know, but we cannot omit or neglect to see like all of the beautiful things you can find in yourself and that you see in the people around you are also a reflection of what you have going on internally. People shouldn't forget that. I know we talk a lot about not trying to judge things and, have acceptance. We also have to accept the joy that we do create and the like innovation that we do create in our lives for the things that we enjoy, more.
It's recognizing all of the aspects of the creation of reality. Gretta, I do want to bring something up that perhaps you can address. We hear every single week the realm tells us, the number one thing is to love ourselves unconditionally. And as Leigh was mentioning earlier, and you also mentioned, these are things from when we were taught incorrectly at a very young age to not love ourselves. And they're very deeply ingrained in the unconscious. And I know I can see where, when, and how I started to not love myself. And yet here I am so many years later, still working on loving myself. How can I accelerate the process, or what else can I do?
First, I want to say, Carol, you mentioned something about that it wasn't correct. You used an adjective, correct or something. I want to say this about everything. Any reality that you create is all good. I don't care if it's a debilitating, what you perceive to be a debilitating disease, it's all good. Why? Because we are learning from that. And that's one of the reasons why we came into this reality anyway. It's a reality of, we're going to school. We're going to school and we're exploring what it's like to be a human being, So everything is all good, even the relationships that I had that were volatile, they're all good because I learned a lot from them, a lot. Now with that, Carol, with your question, I would say, first of all, and it's in keeping with what Leigh just said prior to what you spoke, was that we have to fall in love with ourselves. I highly suggest, before we worry about or concentrate on, let me find a person to love me. I'm going to create somebody to love me. I'm going to create somebody who will respect me, and et cetera, this wonderful individual. But the first thing that we must do is love ourselves. Fall in love with ourselves first, then fall in love with somebody else.
I think that's what I'm asking, though, is how do we fall in love with ourselves?
You have to start treating yourselves better. You have to, do things that I think one podcast I said, bring flowers. Flowers if you're a flower person. Get out there in the yard if you like to be in the dirt and dig around with the worms and plant, trees and shrubberies and all that. Enjoy your life. Enjoy your life. You can go to the show by yourself. You can go to a restaurant. Let me take myself out to dinner. You don't have to wait for somebody else to take you out to dinner. Take yourself. Fall in love with you. Because when you fall in love with you and you're so secure within that internal love of self, you're going to automatically create, if that's on your mind, that you want to create a mate. And it doesn't matter if it's the same sex mate, different sex mate, whatever. A mate is a mate, you see, and you're going to deal with lessons with that mate. And that mate's going to deal with lessons with you. But one way to do that, we encourage people to write down what they want to experience. what do I want? What do I want to experience in a mate? And what happens is people usually start, I tell them, right, I am experiencing, we used to say attracting, but now we know it's creating. I am experiencing creating a mate who is kind to me at all times. I am experiencing a mate or creating a mate who communicates well with me. So you're talking, you're taking down from your thought reality and starting to put it in this reality. I suggest you write it down on paper so you can keep up with it. And that you can say, okay, I don't want this part anymore. I'm going to change that, or I want to add to it. But I suggest you write down what you want to experience, but it's going to be in 2 sections, really. First, most people start talking about what they want to experience with creating the mate, what the mate is going to be like. But then you want to say, what do you want to experience it? So I am experiencing joy in my relationship with my mate. It's not about attracting now, it's about what am I going to experience? I am experiencing peace in my new relationship with my mate. Go ahead, Leigh.
No, I just wanted to, like I was just thinking while you were talking again, and I just was, I mean, if this is all about cultivation from within, right?
Yes.
Shouldn't the first part be like, I will experience kindness with myself, right?
Don't say
like,
will, get that will out of there. Remember,
okay, I am experiencing kindness within, you know, because we often have these, you know, judgmental thoughts of ourselves, you know, oh, you made a mistake, and like, oh, you're so, you know, stupid, or why did you do that, or, you know, like these insults that we hurl, you know, to, you know, at this one, you know, and like the joy we need to experience is here, the kindness we need to experience is here, and the willingness to recognize when we may be less than kind to this one right here, you know, I mean, because I feel like, you know, okay, writing down things about what you want to experience in a mate is perhaps beneficial, but I mean but it's still that internal, it's still like fostering that externalness, you know. Absolutely. Where the step that we can often say, we could often, you know, be sugary sweet or nice with that person in the room. However, what we think about ourselves could be something completely different. So I think it's like just making you know, asking for awareness of the way I talk within, because sometimes it's so present, we don't even hear it anymore.
See, I'm in total agreement with you, and I'm glad that you did that. You said what you said, because that's falling in love with self. See, that's why we're saying the first person you need to fall in love with, and Leigh has given us some explanations of what that looks like, is ourselves. We have to be in that place of self-love to create someone who's going to support us in loving ourselves. So that was, I loved how you said that, Leigh.
You know, no, sorry. I mean, I think, you know, we are human and fallible, and, you know, we do sometimes not always make the correct decision or what we think of. You know, sometimes we just act on autopilot, and, you know, unconsciousness takes over because of these patterns that are just there. And you know, I mean, even just for myself recently, sometimes, you know, there's that expression, you can't see the forest for the trees or whatever, you know, there's plenty around me that I have to appreciate and be grateful for. And oftentimes I am not in that state of mind because my focus has been on what is lacking, right? And I read something recently, the Buddha makes this beautiful metaphor about your garden, right? You have plenty of seeds in your garden. You have beautiful flowers. Maybe you have some vegetables, but there's also the seeds of the weeds in there too. And if your primary focus and all of your attention, and Greta, you talked about this on other podcasts, is just, how I'm going to get these weeds out, that's where all of your intentionality is going, into the weeds, instead of looking at the beautiful flowers and the pollinators. And you just look at those, the beautiful things that you could just overlook because you're so focused on the weeds that you don't even see the colors or take the time to smell them and see what that is like. So I think it's a great metaphor for, slowing down and looking at what's around you and really appreciating and having gratitude for that. And when you put your focus there, those things will grow. And not to say that you just disregard the weeds and let them run amok, but you'll handle them when it's appropriate, maybe with more tools, kinder tools in your work belt or whatever, that's what I have to say.
So isn't it a lot about convincing your unconscious to recognize the love you should have for yourself, or you need to have for yourself, or you do have for yourself? Because I think a lot of times we don't recognize that loving ourselves and creating a mate to love us is still part of prosperity. And prosperity is a circulation type of process. And we tend to focus on, like Leigh mentioned the word lack. We do tend to focus on that and forget to focus on the gift, the acceptance of what has been created that's to our benefit. And that's where the unconscious comes in, and recognizing that there's layers and layers to dig through to find that you are worthy. You should have self-esteem and high worth of yourself. You do deserve the love from yourself, from others. And it's a process, like Leigh said.
Absolutely. And I think with that, it's time for us to move to our second half and take a break. But we want to leave everybody with the idea of fall in love with you first.
Listeners, thank you for being with us this first segment of the podcast, where we'll take a short pause, and when we come back, the realm will weigh in on their quotation. Thank you for joining us. Hello. Thank you for staying with us for Shifting Impressions, Conversations with the Realm of Beings. We're at the point in the podcast where the realm gets to weigh in. So, realm, are you with us?
Absolutely. We are with you both and with the audience. Yes, we are.
So, your quotation we've been talking about today is create a partner who loves himself, herself, and is one with you and happiness and joy. But before you get to just weigh in, like off the cuff, I have a direct question. So I want to know, if all our experiences, if everything is logged in the unconscious, right? So it's all there and we're operating, doing our best. How do we navigate those patterns that are there to, like, innovate and transcend them if everything is like logged there? Everything that ever was is still there.
Are you asking us how you would be able to change those old tags that you carry around with you? Is that what you're asking us?
Yes.
Well, on the podcast, you all have been talking about a lot of things. You've been talking about affirmations, affirming what it is you want to experience, and not affirming what you don't want to experience. A lot of times as humanoids, you can focus on, as you said earlier, both you and Carol, that focusing on the lack, focusing on what we don't have, focusing on that we don't love ourselves, focusing on the fact, oh, I think I'm too fat. Another person will say, oh, I'm too thin. Instead of saying, oh, standing in front of the mirror and saying, I am just right.
So focus, basically, that's what you're saying. What we
Absolutely. Because what you focus on, what you give your intense
energy,
feelings on, that is what you're going to manifest in here. You're going to create that in this reality that we are talking in at this moment. Because it's about, what do you want to create in this reality? There are so many realities going around, but we want to cue into this one right here where we're on Zoom and everybody's looking at us. We want to concentrate right there. Love yourself. Even if you don't know how to write an affirmation, maybe you don't know how to do QDRs, quick displace, replace, that we gave. Maybe you don't know that. Maybe not. Maybe you've never heard of that in your life. But if you can start to say two things, I want to change what I am experiencing. Then the second thing is, you ask yourself, now how am I going to do this? How am I going to do this? For example, I want to be a famous pianist, but I don't know how to play the piano. So what do? You're thinking about, I want to love myself. I want to extend that love. I want to extend my creativity in playing the piano. Ooh, you see. So what do you have to do? You've decided you want to do that. So what is one thing you're going to do about it?
Take piano lessons.
Absolutely. So what we're saying to you now is, just don't sit around and say something. Put action behind it. Put action. You got to have action. You don't have action, it's just going to sit there and look at you. And see, action comes in many ways. Action can come from you using the energy to create it. That's an action. You're actually sitting down and saying, you're going out, I'm putting action behind this. But the first thing you do is put the thought action. The thought action is, I am going to learn to play the piano. Then the next thought action will be, I'm going to learn how to play jazz piano. Then the next action would be, I am not only going to learn how to play jazz piano, but I'm going to play in concerts for other people. You see how you're growing your creation of reality? You're growing it.
Progression.
It's a progression, absolutely. You ladies were talking about it earlier. It is a progression. And you don't want something good like that. That's why we say, love yourselves. Bring that greatness, bring that goodness into yourselves. Enjoy yourselves. Fall in love with yourselves. Appreciate yourselves. and then put the action behind it.
So Realm, once getting back to the actual quote about creating a mate who also loves themselves to be your mate, once you're putting into action love of yourself, how would you put the energy into creating your mate to give you support and happiness and joy?
One way, you all were talking about it, is to write it down. What do you want to experience creating? I am experiencing creating a mate who, and then define that. But put a sentence for each thing. I am creating a mate who cares, shows caring and love for me. You can't make that person be caring and loving for you. You can't make somebody else do anything, because each person is creating their own reality. But when you say, I am experiencing, creating a person who is going to do this, 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 and this, and this, you see, then you're saying, I'm bringing that person to me. Now, that's how you can say I'm attracting that person, but the creation has to come first. Creation comes first, then the attraction comes next. So you can even say, I am experiencing creating and attracting a mate who, and then define that. But see, don't just stick with the mate. Stick with what you want to experience as well, not only with the mate, but what do you want to experience in this relationship internally within yourself? You know, and you were talking about joy, you were talking about peace. Those are internal things that you want to experience in this relationship with your mate. You see.
Now, Realm, our society has more or less considered normal for people to be coupled or to be with mates. Yet some of us have chosen to not have a mate. And sometimes we may feel, we're judging ourselves as doing the wrong thing, like we should have a mate because that's what society says. What is the best way besides loving ourselves, what's the best way to rid ourselves of that false type of statement? Leigh, I'm sorry.
You were asking the Realm, but I was just saying you have to question your beliefs.
Okay.
Absolutely. Because your belief is dictating what's happening. How do you believe? What do you believe? If you believe that leading a single life is best for you, then that is a lesson that you have chosen. And that is okay. It's all right. It's all right to be single. It's all right because it's working for your good at all times. Everything is working for your good. I don't care how it presents itself. Now, if you're a person that's sitting around and saying, I feel lonely, I want to be with somebody, especially during the holidays. You go to your family, everybody's got a mate, and you're sitting at the table by yourself. I mean, not by yourself, with other people with no mate. Then you may begin to, well, maybe I'm not good enough to have a mate. You see, that's taking you in a low vibrational feeling. But if you are a happy person with yourself and you've fallen in love with yourself and you feel good about being single, that's great. There's nothing wrong with being single. There's nothing wrong in having a mate or having a domestic partner or having a husband or a wife. All of those things are acceptable because all of those things and ways of looking at a relationship are all, regardless of which one you choose, is working for your good. It's all working for your good.
Realm, I've had a good friend who reminded me whenever any of us have those doubts in our thoughts. For instance, a lot of single people, and you mentioned the term lonely, they may feel, oh, I don't have a mate, I must be lonely. She reminds me, you're never alone because we're the force. We're all the force. We're all one. So no one is alone per se.
Absolutely.
And if I think of that, that usually dispels any low vibrational feelings I might be experiencing. But I seem to need constant reminders. So, it's work in progress always.
It's all good. It's all good. But what you want to do is to define the relationship, even if it's a relationship with yourself. You want to define it, because how you're going to create it is out of the definition of it that you put on it. So writing it down is our suggestion, because it's concretizing it. It's putting it down on paper. You can read it. You can look at it. And you say, okay, I like this. Oh, no, let me get rid of this. And it's not something that just sits and remains stagnant. It's something that's constantly growing and changing, because each one of us, including us as the realm of beings, our creation of realities are going on all the time, just like yours are. We have lessons to learn, just like you do, you see, but our lessons are different from your lessons, you see, because we're a different species. So we have other lessons that fit with our species.
Realm, as a personal question, has the realm of beings learned how to love themselves unconditionally?
We must.
Okay.
We must love ourselves unconditionally, because how would we know to say that to you?
Okay.
We
I like
have,
that answer.
we have to be in that space. We have to be in that space. We are a collective. So the loving of ourselves is for us, in our minds and our perceptions, because we have them as well, but they're different. It's encompassing. We go as a collective. We move as a collective. So the love of self is a collective love of self in reference to us, because we do not see ourselves different from each other. In fact, there is no each. When we come through Gretta, sometimes we've heard people say, oh, each one of us sounds different, or we each have a different personality, or some of us are funnier than others. That's because we want to enjoy the whole thing. We want to enjoy this experience working with you, you see. And we enjoy it because we love ourselves. We recognize who we are. We recognize who we are in relationship to you, where you and you are us. There is no separation. So there's only a sharing. We're sharing with you our own experiences. What we have learned is what we're sharing. Just like you'll take this and share with somebody else. There you go.
That was wonderful. Thank you, Ralph.
Oh, you're so welcome. You're so welcome. Have a mate if you want one. You don't want one, don't get one. I mean, it's simple. You either want one or you don't. Either way is good. But when you bring them on, see what lesson are you going to learn with this person? Decide, do I want to now experience joy? Because then that person will support you in joy. And you want to find a person that they might not know about loving self, but they're going to be appreciative of themselves. And you will create that person because that's who you are. You're appreciative of yourself. If you're not appreciative of yourself and you dislike yourself intensely and you feel that you are worthless, then you're going to create someone to come into your experience as a mate who will support you in not loving self, in negating self. That person will be there. That's why you have relationships where a mate is physically and emotionally abusive against the other one. And it works either way. There's some men that are abusive physically and emotionally with their wives or their female friends or their female mates, whereas there are men who are being dealt with in a very low vibrational way, that female then is supporting them in feeling that they don't feel worthy, that the man doesn't feel worthy about himself, you see. So each person, we implore each person to love self, because that is going to dictate to you who you're going to create as a mate, domestic partner, husband or wife, however.
Carol, before we wrap up, do you have an announcement to make?
Yes, I would like to just remind everyone that this Sunday, and boy, did it arrive quickly, October 1st, Gretta will be at the Westin Hotel in Mount Laurel, New Jersey. It's a free workshop. It's the Holistic Health and Healing Expo. If you are in the New Jersey, Philadelphia area, we welcome you to come meet Gretta. I will also be there and be happy to meet some of our listeners in person. So please mark your calendars for October 1st.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you, Realm, for sharing your wisdom with us. And thank you, listeners, for joining us on another podcast of Shifting Impressions, Conversations with the Realm of Beings. Until we create each other again, be well.
Once again, thanks for joining us at Shifting Impressions, Conversations with the Realm of Beings on TransformationTalkRadio.com. As you have explored today's creation of reality experience with the realm and me, Gretta, each of you is being supported by us in further developing the understanding that you are not just an individual existing in linear time and space, but a multi-dimensional force of infinite possibilities who is connected to all. So begin to create the realities you want. Join us every Friday at 8 a.m. Pacific Time and 11 a.m. Eastern Time on Shifting Impressions at TransformationTalkRadio.com. So long until we create each other again next Friday.